What's up my Valor peeps, Cadian here, and happy Pride Month! To celebrate this month, I thought I'd make a video about something I'm kinda surprised no one has before, being LGBT plus representation in Tokusatsu. Specifically the LGBT plus characters, though I will be mentioning a couple of LGBT plus actors from the genre as well. As a trans person and Tokusatsu fan myself, I do love seeing representation in my favourite shows, especially when it's done right. This video has had a lot of work put into it, so if you do enjoy it, be sure to comment with your favourite characters, like, subscribe and share the video, and with all that being said, let's get started. So this video will be split up into 4 sections: Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, Ultraman and Power Rangers. And we'll start with Kamen Rider. The first one I'll talk about is Kyosui Izumi, aka the Lunar Dopan from Kamen Rider Double Forever and Double Returns Eternal. One of the henchmen of Daido Katsumi, Kamen Rider Eternal, Izumi was a masochistic subordinate of a Yakuza until he was betrayed and killed. After he was brought back to life as a Necro-Rover, he fell in love with Katsumi, being the last person he saw before his death. Izumi wielded a whip in battle, went on every mission with Katsumi and his team, getting jealous of anyone who got too close to him, following him without question and always sticking up for him if anyone questioned his motives. During the events of the Double Forever movie, he gained the T2 Lunar memory and became the Lunar Dopan, though he was eventually defeated by Kamen Rider Rose. Second is Yu Kamimura, one of the regularly appearing supporting characters from Kamen Rider Wizard. Yu is a trans woman and the manager of the donut shop which Haruto Soma, Kamen Rider Wizard, regularly visits. She always tries to make new donut styles, but Haruto always gets plain sugar donuts, much to her annoyance. In the show's summer movie, the Magic Clan version of Yu was actually able to transform into Kamen Rider Mage, like the other citizens of that place. Yu is one of 2 characters in this video who is actually played by someone who is also queer, being Ichika Kabashima, better known by her stage name, Kappa-chan. During Kamen Rider Wizard's airing and production, she presented as a gay man, but since then has come out as a trans woman. While Kappa-chan never watched Kamen Rider as a child, she has said she enjoyed her time in Kamen Rider Wizard. From only being a rider in an alternate world to being a rider in the series' main world, here is Oren Pierre Alfonso, Kamen Rider Bravo from Kamen Rider Gaim. A former soldier fluent in both Japanese and French, Oren is the flamboyant head chef and owner of the pastry shop Chamon. After confiscating a Sengoku driver and Lockseed from one of his customers for being noisy, he tracked down Ryoji Hase and Hideyasu Jonoichi, Kamen Riders Kurokage and Gridon respectively, and easily beat them in his first fight as a rider, and taking in the latter as a protege, whom Oren helped find his purpose in life. Oren was rather dangerous as a rider thanks to his previous military experience, nearly as much as Takatora Kurashima, Kamen Rider Zangetsu. Despite losing his ability to transform by the end of the series, he regained it years later, along with a permanent power-up to his rider form during an incident with Hideyasu, who had taken over his pastry shop after the former's retirement. While not the same character, Oren did have a counterpart in Zangetsu's stage show, Yukimura Belial Grunstein, Kamen Rider Proto Bravo. He was an effeminate mercenary hired by the villains of the stage show to kill Takatora Kurashima, though ended up having a crush on him, similar to Oren. Yukimura has similar character traits to Oren, including having a protege in Proto Gridon, albeit temporarily. Now I'll be talking about 2 characters together. The Rider Time Ryuki versions of Miyuki Tezuka and Jun Shibara, Kamen Riders Raya and Guy respectively. These 2 fought in the restarted Mirror World Battle of 2019, initially against each other before Tezuka betrayed his team, joined Jun's side and killed their only other teammate. This was almost immediately followed by the 2 of them in bed together, getting naked before, off screen, presumably making out with each other. Later on, they discuss having to possibly kill each other if they end up being the last 2 riders in the battle. Dark Shinji, Kamen Rider Ryuga, ends up meeting Tezuka on his own, telling him traitors would eventually get betrayed, leading to Riot and Guy fighting each other, with the former getting mortally wounded by the latter, later dying from his wounds. Meanwhile, Guy would eventually meet his end by the hands of Ryuga. Yeah, this isn't the greatest representation, and I'd say that's down to the writer of Rider Time Ryuki, Toshiki Inoue, who, among the traits of his works, doesn't handle LGBT characters very well at all. Going into a crossover movie character now, we have Finis, the main villain of Kamen Rider Reiwa the First Generation, who becomes another Ichigo and another new Ichigo. Whilst not ever mentioned in the film, Finis' actress Rina Ikoma said director Teruaki Sugihara described Finis to her as being genderless. While untransformed, Finis uses a masculine pronoun, boku, but as an Anana rider, they instead use watashi, a gender-neutral pronoun. Up next in the Kamen Rider section is Naki, aka Kamen Rider Naki from Kamen Rider 01. Naki is a non-binary humor gear and one of the founding members of MetsuoJinrai.net, originally working for Gaiamatsu before he destroyed their body and uploaded Naki's consciousness into an AI chip which was implanted into Isamu Fua, Kamen Rider Vulcan, sometimes taking control of him and sharing his ability to transform. Eventually they regained a body of their own with help from Yue Aiba, Kamen Rider Valkyrie, and thanks to the arc became a Japanese wolf-themed Kamen Rider which they gave their name to. Amazing suit, by the way. Naki is another case of an LGBT+ character being played by an LGBT+ actor, being Satsuki Nakayama, who during 01's run had identified as asexual and non-binary, though last year came out as a trans man. Now, this entry for Kamen Rider is a case of only the actor being LGBTQ and not the character they play. And that is Takayuki Inagi, who played Onari Yamanouchi from Kamen Rider Ghost, a Buddhist monk of the Daitenku Temple and guardian of Takeru Tenkuji Kamen Rider Ghost. Yanagi only came out as queer years after Ghost ended, specifically as non-binary just a couple years ago. This is another situation of only an alternate counterpart of a character being LGBTQ, and that is Ua from Kamen Rider Geo, specifically Rider Time Geo vs Decade set after the end of the series. In this special, it turns out that Ua has feelings for Sogo, Kamen Rider Geo, and after being dragged to him by Aura, he gives him a love letter confessing his feelings to him. But Gates, Kamen Rider Gates, ends up dragging off Sogo before he can respond to it. Ua does try again later on, but that doesn't go well either, and in the end he gets killed by an attack from Omagio meant for Sogo, who only properly understood Ua's feelings for him just as he dies. Yeah, this is another Inoue written one, unfortunately not the greatest representation. Before I move on to the last entry in the Kamen Rider section, I must explain something that will be brought up once for each franchise, that being a highlight character, an LGBTQ character that stands out from the rest in their franchise for whatever reason. And the following entry is the one for the Kamen Rider franchise. Also, I must issue a spoiler warning, as it regards very recent events from the current series of Kamen Rider, Revice. If you haven't caught up with Revice, I suggest you go do so before viewing this entry, or skip to the time shown on screen. Alright, with that out of the way, on to the final and highlight character for the Kamen Rider section of the video. So for Kamen Rider's highlight character, there are actually two of them, being Sakura Igarashi and Hana Natsuki, Kamen Riders Jean and Aguilera respectively. The latter formerly being the Queen Bee Deadman, and the former being my personal favourite character from this video. With all the stuff that's happened in Revice recently with these two, there really was no way I couldn't include them in this video. It's a bit of a last minute squeeze getting this added in, and the events regarding these two are far from complete as Revice is still ongoing, with this video covering up till episode 37. But anyways, in the show's first arc, Hana, a then member of the Deadmans known as Aguilera, took interest in Sakura and tried to get her to join her side, but she continually refused. Later in the arc, Sakura would become a rider, and Hana would acquire a monster form of her own, but with Ultraman betraying the latter and Gift being captured by Phoenix, the Deadman's generals scattered. In the second arc, Sakura would encounter the mysterious organization known as Weekend, being the ones responsible for sending her the Libera driver, while Hana would go into hiding. Though when Sakura encountered her, the two fought and Hana was utterly defeated. After Hana was rejected by Gif, being deemed to be unsuitable as his vessel, and then Ultica being defeated by Revice for the last time, she leaves, mentally broken, and proceeds to burn her Deadman's outfit, cutting her ties with them for good. Also around this time, Sakura properly joins Weekend. In the show's third and current arc, Sakura and Hana eventually meet once again, with the latter wanting to fight but the former not wanting to. This led to a fight in which Sakura began having troubles with her demon, Lovekov, leading her to realise she needed to separate Hana's demon from herself. After the two had a date at an amusement park, which Hana didn't enjoy at first but eventually started enjoying herself quite a bit, the two of them duelled for the final time, with Sakura acquiring the Hashibiroko vice stamp from George Karazaki during the fight. That transformed Lovekov into a scythe and allowed Sakura to finally separate Hana from her demon without killing her, returning the latter to being human. Right as Sakura was about to separate Hana's demon from her, we got this pair of lines from the two of them, basically confirming their LGBTQ status. It was at this point that Hana ditched her dead man's name and took on her current name. Whether this was picked by Sakura or it was her real name all along, or something else, is still unclear. Now being completely free of both the dead man's and her demon, Hana is genuinely happy. After this, Hana joins Sakura at weekend, and the two could be seen going out on another date on their time off the following episode. In the time between losing her deadman form and gaining her rider form, when she wasn't able to fight herself, Hana watched Sakura fight the forces of Gift from the sidelines in the weekend base, and helped tend to her wounds too, telling her she wishes she could fight in her place, Sakura replying with assurance that she wouldn't lose next time. After Masumi Karizaki, George's father and the head of Weekend, revealed that the organization would be heading above ground, he sent Sakura and Hana out on patrol, Felix having recently announced a system for getting people's demons removed via a special vice stamp. They ended up encountering Vale, Sakura's father's demon, who attacked them wishing to know his location. Sakura transformed into Jan to fight him, but ended up losing, and Hana even tried shooting Vale with a regular gun, to no effect. This confrontation ended when Go Tamaki, also a former dead man, charged right into Vale but ended up getting captured by him. Prior to this, Tamaki had been given a new red driver resembling the Libera driver, and the Buffalo Vice stamp hidden inside his backpack. With the driver equipped with a GPS, these were given to him as a final trial for him joining Weekend, locating Vale's hiding spot. This ended up succeeding, though Vale ended up taking the Buffalo Vice stamp and attacking Tamaki while he tried to protect Sakura, Tamaki nearly transforming just before Vale took the Vice stamp. Hana then took the new driver, dubbed the Weekend Driver, for herself, and with her resolve to atone for her sins from her time as a member of the Deadmans and the recently purified Queen Bee Vice stamp, she transformed into her rider form for the first time, which I must say looks great in action, and gave Vale quite the beating, forcing him to retreat. Later, back at Weekend's base, both Hana and Tamaki ended up passing their weekend entry trials. Not much happened with Sakura and Hana in episode 37, Sakura going with her older brother Ikki, Kamen Rider Revi, to help in a plan to obtain the gift cells required to create something that can defeat the demon overlord for good, and Hana going with fellow weekend member Hikaru, Kamen Rider Overdemons, to fight some demons that had appeared in the city. Many fans, myself included, seem to really enjoy Sakura and Hana, being some great queer representation and arguably the best LGBTQ+ representation that Kamen Rider has done so far. As an additional fact, Hana becoming a rider makes Revice the first rider series with two unique female Kamen Riders in the TV show, which is very exciting and I hope to see more of it in the future. These two are such great representation in fact, that they ended up replacing Naki, my original highlight character for the Kamen Rider section, as the new highlight characters for the Kamen Rider section. Second franchise for the video, and that is Super Sentai, this one having the fewest characters. Firstly is a guest character from just one episode, Io Kodera from episode 10 of Mashin Sentai Kirimager. An internet idol going by the name Princess Yodomi with an urban legend surrounding her and her singing, she was actually being used in the plans of the Music Jammon, and was discovered to be a stalker of Shigeru Oshikiri, Kirime Blue. By the time the conflict is resolved at the end of the episode, it's revealed she fell for Sayo Oharu, Kirime Pink, after the latter saved her when Shigeru defeated the monster. Now for the only other character in the Sentai section, and the highlight for Sentai. Ichika Sakurai, one more hero of the High School Heroes. They were actually the reason I even watched the show in the first place, after seeing a screenshot of the show from someone else on Discord, revealing what made Ichika queer. The High School Heroes isn't a proper season of Sentai, rather a spin-off, but the show is a big Go Ranger tribute, so it fits in this section. In the first 3 episodes of the show, Ichika is a member of the school's art club who also runs the student cafe, being a close and rather protective friend of supporting character Hana, having known each other since elementary school. In episode 2, Ichika was initially suspected to be the identity of the black hair Majin. Though this was later revealed to be someone else, Ichika said Hana was the only one they trusted with their secrets. As the two were heading home at the end of episode 3, Ichika and Hana get attacked by the Sun Halo Majin, with the former using the latter's phone to become Momohiro for the first time to save her. The episode ending with Hana in a hospital bed and Ichika waiting outside her room. Episode 4 starts with Ichika sitting next to Hana's bed, talking about how free they felt when they became Momohiro. We then get some insight into Ichika's childhood, and it is then revealed that Ichika is actually a trans girl, with Hana being the only person she was out to at that time, in fact since 8th grade. Taisei, aka Akahiro, who doesn't know that Ichika is Momohiro or a girl, wants to find a girl to become Momohiro so they can meet the newly appeared Majin. When Taisei says that Ichika meets all the requirements for Momohiro apart from being a girl, insisting that Momohiro can't be a man, Ichika runs off, with Taisei thinking he said something rude and trying to go after her, but Yusuke, our hero, held him back and scolded him, despite not knowing the truth either. Over dinner later that day, she almost comes out to her mum, but her dad, who she isn't comfortable coming out to, comes home at that moment, preventing her from doing so. The next day, while the 4 high school heroes are fighting the Sun Halo Majin, Ichika joins them. Taisei realizing the best candidate for Momohiro was right under his nose the whole time, and that there was no particular role to be a hero. Ichika becomes Momohiro once more, now alongside the completed main team and defeating the Majin thanks to Ichika's sympathy for not being able to be their true self around others. At the end of the episode in the evening, while watching some fireworks, Ichika comes out to the rest of the team, saying they've always identified as a woman despite being born a man. The whole team is very supportive, and Taisei apologizes for being insensitive earlier, even offering to go with Ichika whenever she decides to come out to her parents. She fights with the team for the rest of the series, coming out to the team's 6th member, Huma, aka Ginhiro, in episode 7. Ichika was portrayed by a cis man, but overall, Ichika was a very well done character and some great representation. I'd argue thanks to the script being proofread by LGBT activist Masakazu Yanagisawa, so thank you very much. On to the third franchise, Ultraman. There's 3 to talk about, but not really much for any of them, and in the planning of this video, this was the last section I added. Firstly is the highlight character, Ultraman Justice. Justice is non-binary, though is referred to with he/him pronouns by Tsuburaya Productions' official websites and Twitter accounts. Justice has a female human appearance because of his view of justice, being one that transcends gender, and the concept of fairness not swinging to either side. As a result of this, Justice doesn't see himself as male or female. The next 2 characters are different phases of the same Ultra, starting with Ultraman Noah. Noah, being godlike in power and status, isn't bound by gender and as such is genderless. Not much to this one really. Ultraman Nexus is an interesting one. They're here because their gender changes based on who their host is. For the most part they've had male hosts, but they have had a couple female ones too. Fourth and final franchise for the video, Power Rangers. Before I start this first entry, I must issue a trigger warning for workplace homophobia. It's just for this first one though, so go to the time shown on screen if you do want to skip it. With that warning, let's start with another case of a character who wasn't LGBTQ being played by someone who was. That being David Yost, who played Billy Cranston, the Blue Ranger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and the Zeo Rangers tech support in Power Rangers Zeo, leaving partway through that series. While not out during his time in Power Rangers, Yost publicly came out as gay in August of 2010, revealing the truth behind his departure from Power Rangers Zeo. During the production of those series, Yost was harassed for his sexuality by the show's crew, directors, writers, and producers, and because of this, he wasn't even allowed to be involved in how his character was written out, not finding out till years after. A couple of years later, at Power Rangers fan convention Power Morphicon, he hosted his own panel, signing his autograph on several pieces of memorabilia to raise money on behalf of the Trevor Project, a crisis intervention organisation for LGBTQ youth. During this, some of his former co-stars went up to and gave him a warm welcome in his support. Yost has yet to return to his role as Billy Cranston, though the Blue Ranger has made a couple minor appearances in a couple recent series of Power Rangers. Now, the first ever LGBTQ Power Ranger was the 2017 movie version of the Yellow Ranger, Trini Kwan. In the second act of the film, we learn that she was questioning her sexuality, with Zack, the Black Ranger, realising Trini was having girlfriend troubles, and behind the scenes the character was confirmed as lesbian. Being a character from just one movie, there isn't really much to this one. These next two are both rather interesting, yet similar situations, only being confirmed as gay years after their respective shows had ended. In the case of Dino Charge Green, Riley Griffin, his actor, Michael Tabor, stated on Twitter a couple years ago that he interpreted and played the character as gay, having a thing for Chase, Dino Charge Black. Monty's actor, Caleb Bendit, stated he played him as being gay and having a crush on fellow comic relief character Victor Vincent, even being told to tone it down by the producers, to which he didn't listen. Honestly, good on him. Heading over to the comics for this next entry, here we have a pair of characters from the MMPR Boom Studios comics. Ilarion, the second Purple Solar Ranger, and Remy, the second Orange Solar Ranger. While I haven't read any of the Power Rangers comics myself, these two girlfriends are rather noteworthy for being the first openly LGBTQ Rangers in the franchise. The penultimate character for the video and the highlight for Power Rangers is Izzy Garcia, the Dino Fury Green Ranger from the current Power Rangers series Power Rangers Dino Fury. Having already caused quite the stir in the fandom when she ripped off her skirt after first becoming a Ranger, the next big thing for her caused an even bigger stir in the fandom when it was found out, and a really positive one at that. At the end of the 13th episode of the show's first season, it was revealed that Izzy was dating her rival from episode 5 of that season, Fern. And at the start of season 1, episode 18, Izzy kissed Fern on the cheek and called her girlfriend. It was treated like any other relationship and was an absolutely incredible moment for the Power Rangers franchise, which has prided itself on diversity since the beginning. Heck, in episode 5 of the second season, Fern asked Izzy to be her date to prom. Despite a mix-up with the two's outfits, once they were sorted, the two had some pics of them taken by Izzy's dad, which looked absolutely great. Only the first half of season 2 is out right now at the time of recording this, so hopefully we'll get to see more of the two of them together once the second half of the season is out. Thank you to producer Simon Bennett and the crew behind Dino Fury for giving us our first openly LGBTQ Power Ranger in the TV series. The last entry for the video is one that we don't really know much about right now, and another one from the comics, being the Death Ranger, from the upcoming Power Rangers Unlimited, The Death Ranger. This non-binary Power Ranger was only revealed 2.5 weeks ago, making them the most recent addition to this video, and being from a series that isn't starting till August, not much is known about them. The only information we currently have on the Death Ranger themselves is that they were one of the Omega Rangers who became tempted by the death-defying powers of the Ranger's greatest enemy, and that they have a connection to something called the Omega Vault, located in a place called Safe Haven. Now, the reveal of the Ranger's gender didn't come from the article on the comic series Boom Studios wrote for their website, rather it came from the writer of the series, Paul Allor, on his Twitter account, revealing their pronouns as being they/them in a quote tweet responding to a fan. I'm sure as the series starts and releases its issues, more will be learned about this Ranger, but for now, that's all we have. And that's the LGBT representation in the Tokusatsu genre. As I said at the start of the video, this had a lot of work put into it, and thank you to the people listed on screen, with the exception of the last two are the Twitter tags, for helping out with the video, so thank you. Jay, Kentaro, Calvin, Sunny, Rain, Emilie, and Burkion. To end off the video, I just wanted to share a message from myself. Only having realised I was trans myself just over a year ago, I'm very glad I was able to come out around people in the Tokusatsu community who I knew were and are so accepting of who I really am. Everyone deserves to be able to love who they want and live their true gender without fear, no matter who they are. With all that being said, happy Pride Month, and I'll see you all extremely valid peeps next time.